Good afternoon, everyone. I'll go ahead and call the order Town Council May 2023 work session. And before we move on with business, if you would please stand by the please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So we got a few things on the agenda. I will advise you now at 5 o'clock. We'll be done with business. All right, and if you're in mid-sentence, I'm gonna hit the gavel. I got a hard stop at 5. I got another location to be at, so move forward. Before I go to the first agenda item, I would like to acknowledge it is National Police Week 2023. So I want to just take this time to honor all the police officers and what they have done for us in this town, and they continue to do so. Chief Armstrong, thank you for everything you're part of. So thank you. Okay, so we'll move now into the strategic plan updates. Mary Beth.
And our town clerk got it up for me, so I'm gonna put that down. If you don't mind, I'll just keep this informal.
That's fine. Yes.
Good afternoon. And I told my friends over here that I get to set the tone, so they told me to sit down just for.
Oh, yeah, we
for
did.
no, I'm just. No. Thank you for having us today. And so I'm Mary Beth Manville, the HR director, for those that I don't see on a more frequent basis. And I just want to provide you with an update on our HR department, not only kind of long-term what we're looking at, what we're working on right now, and then obviously what we've got coming up in the next year. So just to get us started, I've got there to the left an overview of our department organizational chart for right now. And then to the right, I've got our mission statement, which we've been in development since I got here, but really honed in with our new team last year and locked it into something we really like. And so I want to call out a few things there that you'll see and we'll hopefully see through themes in the rest of the presentation. So our goal in our HR department is to create a culture of career and community for our employees. And we feel like that's important because we want employees to feel like they can come here, develop their skill set. And our goal is for them to be successful in whatever position they want here with the town, and us to be able to support them and provide opportunities for them to advance if that's what they want to do. And then also to provide a culture of community, because we want to be able to, did I say career the first time? The career is, okay, thank you. Then also for the community, and this comes from something several have probably heard me say. I saw something on LinkedIn that says a workplace, a lot of people refer to their workplace as a family, and we've heard that here before in Apex. However, you don't fire your family. You don't, your family tends to look just like you, act just like you in many cases. And so here we're a community, and I love the idea of Apex as an organization being a subset of our larger community of the population. And so here we have shared values, and we do bring our differences, and that's what makes us unique and makes everyone hopefully feel appreciated when they're here at Apex. So, through all of the development of the plan, that's what we've looked for, is trying to reinstill this idea of you can have a career here, you can have a community, and what would support that. And then attract, retain, and develop a workforce. That's something that we always, in most typical HR departments, you're going to see that. But we specifically chose the word attract instead of recruit, because we feel like we want to position ourselves as an employer that doesn't have to go and ask people to come to us and recruit us, but just naturally attracts them through being such an awesome place to work. So with that, I will move forward into the details. So of the overarching strategic plan for the town, most of what we do falls under the high performing government. And so as we looked through how we can contribute to that, our first goal is to develop a comprehensive strategy to keep the town competitive in attracting and employing a highly qualified and diverse group of candidates. And so we have proposed to do this in a few different ways. Some of them we've already done. But one of the main things that we've started this year and we'll move into next year, fiscal year that is developing an employer branding strategy. And so we actually have partnered with the same group that has done the 150th branding in really identifying what makes Apex unique as an employer, both internally and externally. So it gives us something that we can have pride in. And that's one of the things on our employee surveys we often rate very highly in. I'm proud to say that I'm an Apex employee. And so this is something that internally we can rally around. This is what makes us Apex. That's why you've heard a lot about Team Apex and really pushing that. but then also something that we can market externally in regards to selling, if you will, what Apex has to offer so that others want to come to us. We also are wanting to focus more on making sure that we are recruiting the best talent for the organization. And so obviously there's a legal aspect of that, but assuming we meet that, because that should at the very minimum be what we do, we really want to make sure that we are targeting the right kind of talent that we need for our organization. So it's not just putting a warm body in a seat. It is looking to see what skill sets we need, and really looking to make sure that we're bringing all different types of people from different backgrounds to the area, and then also trying to see how we can, again, put ourselves out there and market ourselves to the community in such a way that we don't necessarily even have to go out so much and really sell ourselves, but that naturally we're getting kind of a pipeline of candidates coming in for our positions. And so we've got a few different ways when we get into the details of our plan that we're going to be doing that. But that will also be through training our hiring managers on how to conduct interviews, but then also how to appropriately source candidates, what you should be looking at things like what kind of education requirements are really needed for positions. I mean, we do some of that through position review as well. But a large part of that will be educating and training our hiring managers on best practices for recruiting, and then also how we kind of get ourselves out there and market ourselves as an employer. And then lastly, establish ourselves as a market leader in salaries and benefits. And that's something we've already gotten a head start on this past year with the compensation study, thankfully with the support of council and also leadership, setting ourselves, to try to lead in the market with salaries. And then obviously also looking at all of our benefits that we have and enhancing those. I think we've got a really nice benefits package now that we're very fortunate that our leadership and council is always willing to entertain ideas and new and different ideas that maybe we've not heard in the past. And so by doing that, we feel like this is really going to set us apart from others in the area. And in Wake County specifically, you've got to be very competitive because you can live in one place and work in about 10 different places if you're in local government. So that's important. Strategic plan number 2, or strategic plan goal 2 is implement and maintain programs and policies that promote a healthy, safe, and productive work environment. And so at face value, this may look like, oh, we're just talking about health insurance or being safe from a physically safe aspect, but this is really where we're investing in our culture here. And so this is not just physical safety, it's psychological safety. It's making sure that people feel like they can come and be welcome here. It's also making sure that they feel like their voices can be heard, that they can express concerns and not be retaliated against. But it's also a place where they can come and know that we are truly concerned for their well-being and that we want to support them being who they are and the best that they are and can be through the programs that we offer through our HR department and as an employer. And so we have lots of different ways that we do this through our health and wellness programs. And then also even with our safety programs, again, it's not just the physical aspects of being safe. We have a lot of participation in the wellness programs that we do right now, and we just anticipate increasing those programs and adding more. We look at more than just, again, the physical and emotional health, although those are certainly key. Tied with the emotional health is where mental health comes in. There's a big focus on burnout now in the organizations and how we need to help employees and support them through that. So again, really going back to this idea of what kind of culture we want to build here with the organization, it's focusing on how can we make this a place that, yes, you come and get a lot of work done and we're taking care of you not only through pay and benefits, but also through that work environment and then all the programs that we do to support you both in and outside of work. There is, I'll hit the top 2 very quickly. I spoke to most of the middle part there. One of the new things that we are looking on, and you'll hear this later on in the presentation, is developing a new hire orientation process. So we onboard employees and we feel like we've got that pretty much down pat in regards to getting them in, getting them set up for that first day and things like that. But one of the things we're looking at in the future is helping acclimate them to the town. Not only does that help, again, give them a sense of belonging here, but then also help them feel kind of that connection and then also get more productive. Actually, studies show that the sooner they get acclimated to the organization, the quicker they're more productive. So that helps everybody. And then also looking at ways that we can get more employee feedback. And so one of the ways we're doing that is through the implementation of a new employee survey. That personnel committee has heard a little bit of that, and they'll be hearing more about that moving forward. But these are 2 of our bigger initiatives this year that will be new as opposed to some of the ongoing work that we're already doing in those middle bullets. Yes, sir.
Can you touch on, we discussed in the personnel committee meeting, the possibility of workout time?
Yes, you want me to talk about that? Sure. So one of the things that we talked about recently in our personnel committee meeting was the ability for all employees to take an hour of their workday to work out or to do some kind of physical fitness. That's something that's already available to our fire and police departments. And historically, that's been the case for them because they are more physical positions. And so there's been a job linked to that. Well, as we've learned more, you could argue that there's a job linked to physical fitness and overall health and well-being, and then productivity for most any job. And that's something that this benefit of being able to work out during the day at work has been something that we've heard from employees for quite some time. We do allow them to take an hour to go to wellness programs. We allow them to take an hour if they want to do training with us. So this may be just another opportunity that we can provide for a wellness initiative. And as we left it with personnel committee, we said certainly the idea has value, and what we really need to talk through is logistically how that works with our departments to ensure continuity of services, but also just making sure that we've got an easy way to manage that if it's to be implemented.
Thank you for sharing that.
Sure. Strategic plan goal 3 is providing ongoing learning and development opportunities to allow Apex employees to perform at a high level and fulfill their career aspirations. So the prior slide, really all of it goes to the career and community, but the prior slide was really focusing on developing that community and also the work environment. This is where we're talking about how we can commit to our employees to developing them professionally and helping them to kind of have that idea of where they can go with their career with Apex. And so some of our main initiatives here are developing a new supervisory program. So all of our supervisors, once they become supervisors, have some minimal training that they get just because now they're supervising employees. But really, we want to take it a step further and not just talk about the compliance pieces or how to do performance evaluations, but also talk about what are those true leadership qualities that we want to see in all of our supervisors. And that starts from the top down. And that's certainly something that Katie and the ATMs and DTM have exhibited for us, and that we are wanting out now to make sure that we see that in all of our supervisors. So that's a great new exciting program that we've got coming out soon. And we actually have a new position that we were awarded this past year, and we got it in January, and we've just recently made an offer. So we will actually have a full-time dedicated trainer in Apex that will be able to provide not only training like this, but also some other training that you'll see here in regards to true professional development training. One thing we want to develop is a leadership program where that's something that employees automatically as current leaders, and we see leaders at all levels, but current leaders would already participate in that. But this is also something that employees who aspire to grow into a leadership position, that want to actually become a supervisor or a manager, they can take that as well, so that in the future, that's something, as we're looking at succession planning, that's something they've already taken, because we really do feel like, in addition to the technical aspects of the job, that's 50% of the job. How you supervise, how you manage, how you lead is the other 50% of that job. And so we need both those aspects when it comes to that for our employees. We have been working on a new performance evaluation tool. We are going to implement that this upcoming year because our performance year, we believe, starts at the very beginning. So July 1st, we'll start a new performance year for our employees. And that new performance evaluation tool will actually be focused around our peak principles of performance, empowerment, accountability, and knowledge. So we're excited about that. And then we also are doing a new career pathing program. And so what this does is allow us to have each position has basically a chart that shows, hey, using HR, for example, if you come in as an HR technician, that's our entry level position. This is your path, or the path that you could take to go to a director. And it kind of shows not only what positions they can move forward in through career progression, which is just enhancing skills and time, maybe getting certification, something like that in their own role, but then also through promotions, how they can move up to the top level of the department. And through this, we'll also have competencies that we'll be working with on the training side, so that they can be taking different kinds of training and different things like that that can be preparing them for those next levels, so that when opportunities become available, they're ready for it. Lots of really cool stuff there. And then this last goal is really more kind of inward facing, but does have an outward impact, and it's regarding looking at how we deliver services and how we deliver our program. So not only is that looking at our departmental business processes to make sure that we inside of HR have our processes documented, and that we have we're running things efficiently, but also that we have a good way for how we are getting information for employees, and we're making it easy for employees to get access to information, and that we're also making it easy for employees to give feedback. And so that also ties back into things like employee surveys, employee resource groups, like the different committees that we may have. And so we've got lots of different ideas for that, but this final one's kind of looking at, okay, with doing all the big things with the different programs that we want to put out, how can we kind of tighten things up within our own department to make things work smoothly, both for us and for those that serve us or that we serve and that also need information from us.
Mary Beth, do you have a timeline on the employee opinion survey?
Yes, so that one is actually, we're meeting tomorrow actually with the UNC School of Government to get feedback on like what all is involved in that. And we have an estimate, or we have a target date of getting that out at the end of the summer. So, and by summer, because I know I think of summer by school summer, but it would probably be like mid to late August. And it's usually about, we're going to confirm turnaround time, but we should have that back sometime.
Thank you.
What's happening now? We have, we've done our compensation study. I'm going to take credit for something we just recently did. So that was back in fall, but it was huge. And again, you guys helped support us in that. So we completed our compensation study, implemented a new pay plan, looked at all of our different positions and made sure that we were competitive in pay. We are now in the process of the career pathing that I was telling you about. So we have our department directors now reviewing those career paths to make sure they make sense. And then we'll be putting in the details afterwards in regards to what those different criteria are to move up within the organization. I spoke of the performance review revamp. So we will finish out this performance year, which is ending June 30th on our old evaluation system, and then kick off the new performance year under the new one. But that is kind of in play right this second. And then the employee and supervisor compliance training is set to go out the beginning of June. And that's HR compliance training, not only in regards to just some basic HR laws, family medical leave, things like that, but also in regards to job discrimination, harassment, things like that, and then how to report it if you feel like that's happening. So there'll be a version both for employees as well as supervisors. That'll be going out in May. And that's required for all of our employees. For next year specifically, I've spoken about many of these things: the implementation of the formalized new hire orientation program, development of our in-house training programs. And I told you specifically of some of those trainings. We'll also have what we'll call open calendar trainings, where there may be one-off trainings that people can go to a calendar in we have a learning management system, which is where employees can go and see all of the training opportunities and enroll to come and attend those throughout the workday. We also are rolling out, hopefully, fingers crossed, our new employee benefits, the peak lifestyle reimbursement and the peak paid time off. That's been included in this year's proposed budget. And then implementation of safety software. We've been doing all of our safety accident reporting manually for several years. And this past year, we've got a new safety and risk manager, and she's been looking into how we can automate that process, which again makes it easier for the departments, but also gives us some really good metrics that we can then use to help make sure that we're monitoring the reasons for accidents, making sure that we're providing supplemental training if needed, and obviously having that opportunity to report back out to everyone on that. Yes, sir.
I know we talked about this in the personnel committee meeting, but I couldn't remember peak lifestyle reimbursement. Does that include child care?
It does. It sure does. Yes, sir. That peak lifestyle reimbursement is $1,200 that employees can have up to that amount to spend on anything. They're all well-being related, but one would be even daycare expenses. All right, and this last slide, we'll be doing lots more than just these four, but I tried to roll up everything that we're doing or that we have planned to do in like the next 3 to 5 years under these big buckets, because this kind of sees you through the life cycle, if you will, of an employee. So starting with how we attract and bring people to Apex, what that experience is for those folks once they actually start with us. So that's an improved new hire experience, and that includes not only what they experience through the recruiting process, but through that first year with us and that new hire orientation program that I told you guys about. Looking at workforce development and succession planning. So I spoke a lot about developing our employees. A large part of that is because we do have a big wave of retirees. We've already had some go through these past couple of years, but we had a lot of folks coming in. I'm going to get the years wrong now. I guess it was around 2000, because I know 2025 is a big year where we may see another wave of retirees moving out. And so succession planning is really key to keep up with making sure that we've got people ready to fill those roles and that we know what we need in those roles. And then again, number 4, and mentioned pieces of this, but enhanced employee engagement. And so that's making sure, once we've got you here, we're developing you. We want to make sure this is a way that you really stay engaged, that you're happy to be here at Apex. You feel like you have a voice at Apex. You feel like you can be successful at Apex, and really that you are a part of this team and what makes it such a great place to be. With that, I'll take any questions.
I have a question about, 3 questions, and you can answer them now or you can shoot them to me via email. But one of the questions is with regard to strategic goal number 2. We talked about we've got a, we're trying to maintain programs to promote healthy, safe, productive environment. Do we have a kind of a formalized and an informalized grievance process within the town? And if so, I'd love to kind of, you don't have to give me the breakdown for it, but just a little bit of an understanding of how that works, because, particularly with respect to formal versus informal processing and who's, who is involved in each one of those. And then with respect to goal number 3, I know that it's a laudable goal, and I think it's incredibly important that we are developing that next, developing our bench. Do you know how much we're spending in terms of professional development programs? And
I don't have that number off the top of my head.
And like I said, you can email that to me. I know this is a cold, it's hard to ask for cold numbers like that, but I would love your assessment as to whether or not you think that's an appropriate amount. Are we investing enough in our leadership bandwidth?
Sure.
To make sure that we're sharpening the saw along the way?
I'm with you. And I guess I should say, so I, by myself or by the department itself in HR, we have $25,000 for organizational development each year that we spend on town-wide things that we do. What I don't know is there's also training budgets within each department that they're more position specific. And that's what I don't have. But I will give you an example of what has been a great commitment this year, not only from leadership, but even budget, trying to work to find some money. One of the foundation of our leadership program will be the critical conversations and crucial conversations and crucial accountability training programs. And so to purchase those kits and to actually get the certifications for those, if you've never read those books or done any training with that, they're great. That was a good commitment from the town. I had to go outside about $15,000 more than what my organizational budget had. So there's definitely the commitment for that. And I know I've even heard from Katie ideas of in the future, even having other things like even professional development grants that we might have for employees within the organization. So, and there's tuition reimbursement. So good investment, but do you want to know the numbers total from the departments, or is that satisfy that question?
I think from the departments would be good, because I'm trying to think of it holistically, because I feel like it appears that within this professional development run, what we're trying to do is not only build competency within the silo, but a lot of cross-functional understanding and awareness. And I just wanted to kind of get a sense as to, all right, is this something from our standpoint, budget-wise, do we need to say, all right, let's start looking at that as an increased budget item for succeeding years, especially knowing that 2025, we're basically going to hit that next wave. So if we've got 2025 as the next wave, do we need to start putting money into 2024, developing the folks to take advantage of that next wave?
Gotcha.
One of the things I'll add to what Mary Beth said in response to succession planning. So as we're building out our new performance evaluation process, part of that process will also be a development plan. She's talked a little bit about professional development grants. So in the departments, as part of their position descriptions and position responsibilities, there may be certifications attached to those jobs. And those things are required professional development. But the next level is looking at, one, where do you want your career to go and how can we support that? And so after you get those certifications that are required as part of the job, we also want to be able to support folks' upward mobility, whether it's in the organization or external to the organization. What can we do to provide resources for them to develop those skills that may not be specifically aligned with their job responsibilities, but help them to be in their long-term career goals? So, and then the other thing, you may hear a little bit about this when Linda presents, is just kind of doing this baseline learning needs assessment to kind of make sure that we understand where people are. As part of that training and development position is that, are there themes that we see across the organization in terms of opportunity for development that we can kind of create some things in our cornerstone learning management system that anybody can access versus those things that people may go out and take advantage of those opportunities that's unique to the individual. So we're going to be doing a comprehensive look at training and development and making that investment.
Okay. Regarding Councilman Gray's first comments, can we make the Friday council report updates?
On agreements?
On the grievance, because it's a topic that we discussed during the previous work session.
Okay.
And I'd like to understand kind of where we are with that.
Mary Beth? So I wanted to ask, while we have you here, I'm talking about HR, can you give us sort of like your sense on what the hiring environment looks like for the town
Sure.
today in May 2023?
Yeah, so as many of you may know from your own places, we have been in that, not just HVACs, but everyone has been in the great resignation for a while now. But that is slowing down, and we're seeing that also with our positions. So we do right now, I think we do have about 50 positions open, and that's been maintained. Honestly, I mean, it's a lot, but it has been consistently about that number, because with folks that are retiring, that's a large part, or them being promoted into positions, because we got all those new positions last year, they have opened up vacancies. I don't have our voluntary, I just said that report off the budget, but I don't have our voluntary separation out yet. Are you getting ready to write that to me right now? Nope. Okay, I thought you was writing me a note. But if you look at those in our monthly report, I will tell you that that we have, you can see the involuntary, which is basically folks that are retiring, things we don't have control over. People want to retire or other reasons. But when you look, that's our total turnover, I should say. And then our voluntary turnover are just those who are choosing to leave us, but not for retirement or not because we've asked them to leave. That's been the case. And that has maintained very low and even lower than those in the area. So what we're finding is, even though we are having vacancies, it's typically for one of two reasons, the majority of them. It's positions that people have either retired from, and then we promoted them back in, promoted within into those positions, or it's been positions that those vacancies that then are the ones people have moved into are then vacant, or it's those new positions. We had 50 new positions last year, and we're going to be close to that this year. And so it's just getting to that, getting totally staffed is getting difficult. But those really are what we're hearing. We monitor the reasons people are leaving and things like that. And it's not, from what I consider, anything that it's like Apex is not the best place to be. It's truly people are either retiring because the time has come, or they're vacating positions because they're moving up to the organization, which is great. So when we start to, so one of the things back to the recruitment strategy is trying to figure out how we can expedite the recruitment process. It's really actually pretty good right now. I mean, typically on average, police and fire take much longer, but around 60 days. I would love to see that a little bit shorter to get those filled. But what we've found is that, again, with the hiring market, we've got to move that much faster to get people, because there are other organizations that are also trying to get their positions filled. So that makes it a little bit harder. But I'm seeing a slowdown, and I'm seeing that even the number of requests for new positions come up or are slowing down. So, and we just hired 8 new people this past week. And there's just, I mean, almost every 2 weeks, we're hiring almost in the double digits. So we're filling them as quickly as folks are leaving, but that is starting to slow down. And that's being expected. I actually just was on a webinar earlier today that was saying that it's starting to see that slow down across the region. So hopefully that.
Mary, it's my experience that folks who get promoted to be in a management position often are either have a long duration in the organization, or they are really good at their job. But I feel like that doesn't always mean they're good managers.
Okay.
And are some of these things you're talking about here kind of trying to address that? So I'm not sure that that's probably an Apex or not, but like, I think it's common in government work. So like, I'm wondering, are some of these things kind of addressing that kind of bad promotion practice?
Yeah, no, it's a very real thing. And I think it can be in both private and public sector. But yes, that is exactly what we're trying to address. And what we want to make sure we do is help explain the why, because even if that's something that has been going on here at Apex, and again, I think it happens in other organizations as well. But, you know, if that's been a practice that it's just based on seniority or whatever it may be, that you just get promoted, we have to, I feel like we have just as much of an obligation to explain to them, hey, that may have been what it was in the past, but now here's what our new expectations are. And that is certainly that you have value because you've been here, but we also need to make sure that we're promoting people that are going to support all of our values and all that we said about making this a place of career and community. And so telling everyone then, these are the opportunities you have to prepare yourselves for those openings. And so we can go, my commitment then to all of our employees, whether you've been here a little bit of time or not, is you understand what it takes to get promoted, what we expect, and then what our values are. And then if that's something that you're interested in, we'll be behind you 100% to help get you where you need to be. And so I think a lot of that's just explaining if there are different expectations or new expectations, that's what's happening. But that is our goal, is to make sure that we're putting the right person in those roles.
I guess follow-up is, is there a good inventory of jobs that people who are really good at their job but never want to manage people, can they rise in the organization and be happy and not feel like they have to go into management to get whatever job level they want?
Yes, absolutely. So that career pathing that I was talking to you about, it actually takes you, some of them do go all the way up to the director level, but what we did set as a goal for ourselves is to provide career progression opportunities for a majority of our positions, so that if that's something that you want to move up, but you don't necessarily want to ever supervise, that you still have those opportunities. So there's a few different ways that can happen. It could be truly, again, to use HR as an example, an HR tech goes to an HR consultant. Right now, HR consultants don't supervise anyone. So you have promotion opportunities to gain knowledge and move up money-wise and responsibility-wise. Or let's say someone's happy to be an HR tech their entire career. Well, we are putting pay policies in place that say, well, if you continue your education and you build your skill set as an HR technician, we want to support that too. And so we're also willing to provide opportunities for increase and even some increased responsibility, as long as it doesn't push them into another classification within that particular position that they're in.
Thanks.
And I'll just add, that is what's needed, so that you give so that those people who maybe are wonderful technically, but aren't necessarily the ones that fancy managing people, providing them opportunities to succeed and move in the organization too. So those could go in.
I think especially in an organization where it's not really bottom heavy as far as years of service, like where I work, EPA has been around a long time. So there's a lot of people who are older in the organization, and there's kind of, I perceive, a lot of people perceive a kind of a cap in that they limit the number of, experts in the subject or whatever, and people feel forced to go into the management, and then they're terrible. And then the whole thing kind of, it affects a lot more people when they're a bad manager. So
Yeah,
I know here we're kind of a triangle at the bottom of the triangle is growing so fast, but eventually we won't be, and it'll be good to have kind of that kind of inventory in the pipeline. So thanks.
I'll add to one of the other things that we're doing. I talked to you all a little bit about the extended leadership team, where we have the directors and then that next level of leadership, and we get together on a quarterly basis so that we're learning together things that are like focused on organization values, strategic planning. We just recently, I think in January, we had someone come in and do the leadership challenge. So we've been doing that the last 2 years. And then we're having some discussions about that middle management doing something, kind of building a cohort around that to do some similar things, so that value proposition kind of cascades down throughout the organization to the rest.
Good. Thanks.
Other questions? Thanks for the wonderful update from HR. A lot going on. Thank you so much. Move now to DEI update. Infamous Linda Graham Jones, Director.
It's Davis.
Davis.
Would you say
You say how great you are.
Call me Davis. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, well, let me pass it. Good afternoon, everyone. I am excited to talk to you about DEI strategic plan today. Because in 2021, Town Council and the town manager prioritized DEI as a department and is intentional about DEI efforts in the town. So I greatly appreciate that. Hence, give me DEI team. So I was brought on in February of 2021 of 2022. And then I was fortunate enough to bring Celeste on about 2 months ago. She's here with us, and y'all have all met her. And so we have come up with this plan that, of course, it's going to take more than just us. But in the area of DEI, it is a shared responsibility. It will be all throughout the town, leadership and employees. And so we have come up with our department overview, which is the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Department provides consultation, education to ensure a community of belonging, diverse representation among employees, and that residents have equitable access to services. Again, our plan will permeate throughout all of the other strategic plans. So our strategic plan number 1 is workforce. And so Mary Beth and I will be working very closely together as we tackle this primary focus area. Build and support a more diverse, inclusive, and equitable workforce, which employees reflect diversity at all levels, which goes into what the conversation we just had. So what we're going to do is to make sure that we obtain and analyze the data that we have to identify those opportunities around increasing workforce diversity here in the town. We're also going to identify and address biases in the talent acquisition process and create connection and sense of belonging for all employees. So one initiative to make that happen is we will be implementing a search advocacy model. And that is where DEI will work with HR to be throughout the whole life cycle of an employee. So we will work with job descriptions, we will work with the recruitment, the retention, the training, and I'll talk a little bit more about the training as we go along. But those are the type of things that DEI will provide a lens for that. And not only support HR's training, but then create a required DEI training for that foundational purposes for our employees. But most importantly is the onboarding at this point, because now we have the opportunity to start to introduce a DEI philosophy. Strategic plan goal number 2 is procurement. So this will be to ensure policies and ensure policies and spend reflect the town's value to create an equitable entrepreneurial ecosystem with purposeful inclusion of suppliers, vendors that represent the diversity of our community and region and bid opportunities and procurement contracts. So what we'll do here is look at increasing the opportunities for diversity with our vendor participation in the town procurement process, looking at targeted networking and marketing programs. So I'm partnering with economic development around their MWBE program to create a database so that we can know who we're working with and what gaps they may present. And the work that we're doing now will also help us move toward preparing for that diversity study. I'll get to that in a few minutes as well. And so I just talked about number 2. Number 3 is culture. So we're going to build the foundation needed to create and sustain a diverse, equitable, inclusive community. And we're going to do this by creating a welcoming organizational culture and community culture. And so here we're going to look at our different trainings that we're going to talk about in terms of cultural competency, to really figure out with this learning assessment where the gaps are so that we can create the training around DEI and around HR. Education and awareness. This has been a huge one that I've worked on a lot since I've been here in regards to special events or either getting in special requests to partner. So we will provide consultation on how to engage diverse communities and populations in outreach, education and engagement on town services, programs, procedures, and policies where applicable. Again, providing this consultation. And one way that I will do that is I will be part of the policy review committee. So we will look at our policies and procedures. We will look at different department strategic plans and put a DEI lens on it. In regards to equity, what are the gaps there? Because one thing that I did when I came to the organization is I really took a year to meet with all of the department directors to make sure that I first created a relationship, because DEI was new to the town. So I think a lot of people didn't know what to expect. And so I needed to cultivate those relationships. So now going into a year and a half, now it's time to take those gaps and put an action plan to them, which is how I really came up with these 4 things. So what's happening now? As Katie mentioned, and as y'all have already spoken with, the town has invested a great deal of professional development in me. So I thank you all. Thank you, Katie, for the Georgetown Executive DEI certification. This was an absolutely wonderful program for every dollar that was spent. Yes, was it a hard work? Was it challenging? Did I cry? Did I lose some hair, turn gray? Absolutely, but it's gonna make me honestly a better person to help the town move forward. How we are going to approach people, how we're going to talk to people. And then also the assessment. It helped me kind of rediscover who I am, if you will. We did some serious assessments. And even to the point I had to talk to my husband, I'm like, am I like that now? He was like, yeah, that's just. Is that a good thing? He was like, it's all right. Right? And so that helps out professionally and personally. But it was a 6-month experience and it was online. But again, it having some of those tools will help me implement the plan that I'm demonstrating that is much needed today. The second professional development is ICMA, Institute on Race, Equity, and Inclusion. And so this is a partnership with the Kettering Foundation, National League of Cities, and ICMA, where I have an opportunity to take this plan and make it a capstone. So I'm looking at other practitioners across the country who are really, really experiencing a lot of resistance around DEI, unfortunately, from the leadership. So I'm grateful that I don't have that obstacle. But the capstone will be exactly what the DEI plan is. So this also helped me to come up with these themes, with these initiatives, and how we will go forward. DEI and Apex Police Department, a partnership with cultural assessment. As you know, when I came here, I was introduced to the cultural assessment that took place in 2022. And out of that came some items around DEI working with the police department. And so I thank Chief. I think we met like the first week I got here, and also a week before I even started, just to talk about our action plan around the cultural assessment. And so what we have been doing is making sure that the trainings that they have a DEI lens on them. Because one thing in that cultural assessment was to say to create a DEI committee. Well, after my assessment, my recommendation is not to focus on one department. Let's focus on the town as a whole, and that will include the police department. The other thing is I sat on several selection boards, captain, lieutenant, even social worker, compliance manager. So having that opportunity to sit in on those panels. Also, I was consulted from Chief to look at some of the interview questions, the assessment preparations, and to provide input in that regard. He's also consulted with me on, you've heard about the Faith Action ID. And so just making sure that we went out to our Hispanic community and had that conversation around, this may be a great program to implement. This may be a great partnership to implement. However, what are the unintended consequences around that population? So we need to sit down and have that conversation. And that's what led us to moving forward with that. Anything, Chief? Oh, yeah, some other positive. He had me busy the first thing. So, and it's minor, but just looking at some policies and procedures in regards to language. They have sent me some things around recruitment. So instead of saying the quality candidate, what is quality? Excuse me, the ideal candidate, just candidate. So it's around gender neutral terms. The language access plan is huge. So we are working with Building Integrated Communities with UNC to create and implement the First Towns language access plan. And what this involves is a 1-year commitment where we have a team, we have staff as well, and we have a community partner. Our community partner is Fiesta Christiana, and our staff is Stacy Galloway, Communications Director, Alan, Town Clerk. We have Steffi, which is our receptionist downstairs, because she is a front line when she sees a lot of people. So we thought she was instrumental in being a part of our team. And then there's me. And we also have Celeste as well. And so what this is a 1-year commitment where they're giving us the tools to create this action plan. And what are the sessions? It's around interpretation services. It's around translation services. They're also going to be giving us a budget so that we can create our foundation in regards to what type of equipment will we need. This will be a great way also looking at our materials, website, printed materials, again, digital. How are people coming to engage with the town council? Yes, we have a process in regards to if someone has to have a special accommodation, but we want to get a little bit more proactive and make sure that we're including people so that they won't have to say, hey, you kind of missed me. And so with this, we will implement this in January of 2024. Cultural events, that's when you see me with my hair up, and I see y'all out there too. We have a lot of cultural events, which is great. It's a great engagement for the town, but it also provides an opportunity when we're having fun to have those conversations with people. What is it that you want to see that we can reflect your participation with the town? For example, we had the courageous conversation for Women's History Month. I'll be honest, I just thought it was an idea and it would be great, but it turned into a wonderful event. And from that did stem where I've had residents say, hey, can we do this? Can we do that? And so having that conversation and creating those community partners, they become stakeholders. And this is their community. I work for this community. Of course, you know, we have our Juneteenth, our Apex Pride, we have others, and then we have opportunities to enhance that around different organizations. We have the Ukrainian Lutheran Family Services that came to us and said, hey, we want to just use your space for a community resource fair. That was very impactful in regards to Officer Victoria Carter was there. So she was interacting with this beautiful little boy and his mother, and she was translating, of course, but he played with that toy in his little car just like any other person. And it was great just to see that interaction because we were a part of that. And so we have to be visible to make sure that we are hearing and seeing and being inclusive. Okay, so action plan for 2024. Again, the language access plan, I said that's a 1-year commitment. Another huge project that we have is certified welcoming designation. This is Welcome in America, which has 6 different standards that has the indicators under those, which are civic engagement, connected communities, safe community, economic development, equitable access, and civic leadership. Civic leadership. And so each one of these pillars actually have requirements that we can fulfill to become part of a 2 to 3 star designation. That's where we're going to go for, is a 2 to 3 star. And that's going to take about 18 months. I submitted the application in May 1st. We were accepted. And so beginning tomorrow, we will start the boot camp to figure out how we're supposed to implement this. Katie is very familiar with this, and I appreciate her bringing this to my attention in terms of what the standards look like, because it also goes back into the language access plan. That's one of the requirements. So we're half the battle there. Policy review, that's self-explanatory. Again,
If I can jump in real quick on the certified welcoming designation, that's specifically to be considered an immigrant-friendly community. So with the growing diversity in our community, that designation, I think, would be really important for us. And those standards that she talked about it in a high level, those 5 or 6 standards, but it has some specific criteria from a policy perspective, access to social services, how your law enforcement is interacting with your community, access to education, healthcare. It has some very specific criteria that we need to meet. So that's why it's an 18-month designation. And then the only other thing I'll add is she's going through a 24 action plan. All of these presentations are very high level, so they're giving you their goal and the objectives under each goal, and then under there's some additional details. So you'll get those action plans once they're completed.
Thank you. Special events, training and development. So again, we're going to be doing that learning assessment to figure out where the gaps are and develop some required DEI training. The town is very open and employees are open. We've done those town hall rep sessions. I think it's time for us to reimagine how we are engaging our employees around DEI. There's interest there. There's eagerness there. I get different conversations with our employees around just, hey, I ran into this situation. How do I handle it? And it could be a situation just in their family or even at work. So we want to make sure we build the tools again so they will be successful.
And I want to jump in right here. So Mary Beth talked about the compliance training. And so the way that we're looking at the DEI training and development process, it's kind of like this tiered approach. So the first is like, what are those required things that we have to do that legally, if we found to be, to have discriminatory allegations, what do we have to do legally to respond to that? So HR is starting that process in next month, where all employees will have to go through that training. And then Linda is going to do a learning needs assessment, and it'll what we're looking at is possibly making that as a part of our employee engagement survey. If it doesn't add too many questions, to get a baseline understanding of what our gaps or our blind spots are as it relates to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and then developing that next level of required training for employees. And then we'll have that third level is this suite of training and development that's available to employees at any time. So then as the onboarding process is built out, that compliance piece will always be a part of the onboarding, and then that next level suite of training that we're making required will be that next level of training as the second part of their onboarding. So there are some things that we're building in as requirements for all of our employees as it relates to training in this area.
And so the DEI advisory committee, as I spoke earlier, my recommendation is to have that across the town from each department so that we have buy-in from each department. So we figure out what are the levels of resistance? How do we overcome some obstacles that may come up? And so I will be implementing that by the end of July. So I'll get everybody selected, interested. And so one thing I do want to point out is, yes, we have leadership and we have extended leadership, but there's employees in the organization that are not a manager or supervisor level that have an interest in regards to DEI, have great ideas and significant input. So we will be looking at all employees. And MWBE engagement, what we've already done now is create the MWBE program, Working with Economic Development, and we have a webpage dedicated to this. Which leads me, and I'm going to go on to number 3 around the disparity study. And so we're looking at probably launching a disparity study on 24-25, but the work that we're doing now and starting last year is really leading up to a disparity study. So I know you're aware that municipal jurisdictions, once you have an MWBE program, government, you are required to have a disparity study.
And we have to do that before we set up the program. We have to show justification for having a race and gender conscious programs. You can't have, so what that means is that we'll have a certification program. We'll actually be able to set goals on bids to say, like, we want 10% NBE or 5% WBE, and then do contract compliance on that. The reason why we pushed it out is because with the personnel changes in the finance department, a lot of the data is going to be based on our procurement data, and then being able to look and see how we're currently doing business with WNBE. I don't think that we're doing a very good job of tracking that right now. So we need to make sure that we build that out. So that's why we're starting to collect that information now. And then the second part is going to be a heavy lift for the legal department. So trying to give Gloria some leeway before we jump into that.
And so I think, in the sake of time, I've put the highlights in terms of the cultural assessment, the disparity study, the welcoming certification, and the learning assessment. I just want to reiterate, I appreciate all of the support that you have provided. I will say now is implementation time. So we'll see, and I'm excited to see what happens. One thing that I did want you to know in one of the strategic goals is that I will be establishing a DEI intake process for DEI complaints. So we may see an increase in complaints, but that's only because we don't have a formal process now. So that gets back to the employee engagement to make sure that they have a voice and that they're heard.
How would that be different from a regular HR complaint? Why would we separate? Right?
It could be around protected classes. It could be a non-discrimination piece around the protected classes.
And then why would you separate it from like another HR grievance process?
Generally, if there's a protected class, you would separate it out because the fact finding process may be a little bit different. And in different organizations, it can be set up differently. Some organizations will have it as part of HR, but you can still do a kind of like a parallel investigation process for the discrimination. Because you may be asking a different questions or looking at data in a different way.
And we have had, we've actually tested this out a little bit, and where we landed was they'll likely start with HR as part of our process, and then we pull DEI in if needed. It's important to know, and this is always a hard job in HR anyway, though, where you can feel a certain way because something's happened for various reasons. And so is there a discrimination aspect here, or is this just a poor manager situation? And so that with helping, and we're literally in the same office suite, so we can easily get together, but it's typically they'll come and kind of do that first debrief with us, and we'll work with you on your process to fine tune it. But that's how we've seen it going so far, is they start with us and then we pull DEI in based on that initial intake of what we've got.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Questions? Jones, thank you so much. You're doing a wonderful job. Appreciate you leading us in this area. And, you have our support. 100%. Okay. We move on now to communication director, Faith Galloway. Yeah, 5 minutes now.
I'm aware. So hello, everyone. Excited to be here. This is the communications department first year as a full-blown legitimate department of our own, with our own very own budget to manage and our very own team of people to lead. And so it's a new space for me, something that I'm growing into, and I appreciate your support as we work to catch up on the amount of communications that need to be shared. So I'll start with our team. You will see 150 everywhere this year. I hope you see it often and often. But so this is our team, and hopefully you guys have met Randall on the left, and Kendall and Karen. Randall joined us in December of 21. Kendall joined us just a few months ago, December 22. Karen's been with us for about 7 years, but she was in economic development before she was communications. And I've been with the town for about 12 years. All right, so we'll get down to our strategic plan goals. I will tell you that most of these developed out of our communications assessment run through Zen City. And I think you all had an opportunity to do an interview with them and share your thoughts on what our challenges are, what we could be doing better, and what's working well. So thank you for your participation in that. So the first goal is mostly related to the external communications piece. What are we doing, and most importantly, why? Okay, so we're trimming this tree, but do you know it's so that the limb won't touch the electric line and cause an outage? And so we're really working this year to start doing that storytelling around our programs and our initiatives. We're developing an editorial calendar with input from all of our departments. So we just established a content planning group that meets monthly. And so we need them to fill in those gaps. Sometimes we don't know what's happening that's important to them. So we're working with those liaisons to develop the calendar that really fills in every source of communication we have: website, video, social, everything is all rolled into that, or stems from that editorial calendar. And then something that's really important to us this year is connecting the audience with the people behind that do those jobs. So as we're developing, their full well-being, we're also showing them our love and the community's love, because they're, so appreciated. And so we want to connect those stories. And then fine-tuning our strategy for special event promotion. We've come a long way with getting organized around communications for special events, but there's some fine-tuning to do, and we're probably 80-90% of the way there. So we're working on that.
You work with Wake County and their communications to kind of help inform residents about county versus municipal functions very much.
Good question. I know we will say this is a county function when we need to. But yeah, so we develop close relationships with many of the local Wake County jurisdictions. We just had a conference a couple weeks ago. All NC communicators came together in Wilmington And we love to commiserate and say, what are you doing well and what am I going to steal from you? And yes, you can have that language. And Wake County, we partner with them on a bunch of different things. One that really comes to mind is our work with the Harris plant and any emergency communications. So a lot of that falls to them in those situations. So yeah, we talk to our peers across the county.
I think there's confusion, especially if people that move in from a different place where the municipality does more of the stuff.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
They often kind of expect Apex to do something that's not our responsibility.
Right. So one thing that we're working to develop, and this will come through this content planning group too, is sort of a good neighbor or new resident guide. So it's been on my list for probably 2 years. When people move to, you kind of like piecemeal it out, but you know, a really comprehensive guide on what you can expect from the state or the county or the town or the school system. You know, we don't run the school, so there's a lot of differences that people don't understand coming from different places. And then what can you do to be a good neighbor? And one day we'll finally learn how to explain in a really concise way what a right of way is. And that's what, you know, on our long-term goals.
So speaking of right of ways, one thing I don't see in your list here, Stacey, is communication plans around major projects.
Yes, sir.
It's it.
That's coming.
It's coming? All right.
Yes, sir.
That should be ahead.
All right. So goal 2 is more focused on internal communication. So while HR is really engaging, we are creating some organizational awareness around a lot of our programs. Some of that also comes back to the content planning group. When they're sharing, you know, what is planning working on, a lecturer is saying, oh, that's helpful to know. It's great, you know, to know those Richardson Road closure is going to happen at some point. You know, there's a lot of things that are really managed by departments that need to be shared across those silos, so that we're working to break those down. Participating in a lot of the internal teams as we move through our ERP, our 311, our organizational assessment, and a lot of change management is happening, and communications. It falls to us to help distill that down and then communicate that back out to our employees in a way they understand.
And Stacey, you're probably going to get to this, but how much coordination are you having with like the other departments that have kind of the mini communications function? Police comes to mind.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we talk to police often. Parks has a very active communications function, and we talk with them often as well. So yeah, we're on, you know, we burn up the Teams chat quite frequently.
And there's a consistency of messaging, I guess.
We're working on that. Yeah.
Consistency of messaging. I'm trying to get
Yeah, we're working on that, and and I'll hit that a little bit later. Okie doke. Number 3, our goal is to guide the community through certain situations with effective communications planning. We are not there yet. We do not have a crisis communications plan. We have an emergency operations plan. We plan all the time and drill for certain things, but we don't have an overall crisis communications plan. And that's something that we hope to work toward with the addition with the public safety PIO. And then goal number 4 is got 150 again. We cannot not include this in our goals because we've done so much work to carry out the 150th. So even though the work, you know, just kicked off, or if the public facing piece kicked off in February, we were working for 18 months before that, planning everything that's happening right now. And hopefully you're seeing the community engaged in those efforts. Okay. Next up, I feel like communications is one of those things where you open 10 tabs at the beginning of the day and you touch none of those tabs. And so I threw it all up there. There are so many things that we're doing right now to support our departments. And then series that we're developing that with the addition of our digital media specialist, Kendall, and with multimedia specialist, Randall, things that we are really able to ramp up and be more intentional about. So, and then branding is an ongoing process. And then there's lots of ongoing stuff happening every month that we could talk about. I know that.
I got one question.
Yes, sir.
Just for the record.
Yeah.
A lot of people have asked this.
Absolutely.
As far as the Latino festival. So I don't know if Ms. Jones can explain for the record why it's not occurring this year, because I think a lot of people think the town of Apex is not putting it on.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
I don't have that.
So, meeting with Pastor Jose at another meeting, last week, he indicated that it's just going to be put on as a pause this year. They are planning to have it again next year. Initially, we had approached him with Parks and Recreation, and I had approached him, was trying to align it with Hispanic Heritage Month for the month of September. And so, but for the last 14 years, they have been doing it the first Saturday in June. And so his concern was that he wanted to have some type of branding to be consistent. Number one, he did not have any objections to moving it to September. The biggest obstacle at this point is that they were returning, his board members and families were returning back to school, lining up with some of his board functions. And so that's why at this point, it was just put on pause for a year, but they are planning to bring it back next year.
Thanks for that clarity. Appreciate it.
Well, and you brought up a good point. One thing that we're really working on this year is explaining what a community event is and what a town event is, and who to contact for each of those types of things, and who would have the best information for both. I'm showing you this because it's one of our, so for last month's Facebook analytics, this is our number 1, 2, and 3 post. And I wanted to explain some of the time difference between each of these types of communications. So number 1 was Beaver Creek Commons at Zeno Road stoplight installation. I saw an email that said, hey, the light's active. Like, let's get out there and get a picture and throw it on social, let people know that it's done. We are so excited about this. But it took some time to develop that message and check in with engineering. Like, it's good, right? Like, we're not going to take it down. It's not just a test mode. And so once we put it out, it was shared crazy number of times and then had to spend some time answering some questions. But all in all, maybe an hour of time for that post. So the second piece is the National Line Worker Appreciation Day. Kendall went out and shadowed our electric department for half a day and worked with various crews, put together some stories on Instagram and Facebook around those. And then, so it was more of like a 4 or 5 hour investment. And then the third piece was a full-blown video production with our electric department about transformers and how far your plantings need to be away from those transformers. And that was probably our 8 or 9 hour commitment because editing. It was a heavy topic, and we had someone who was very knowledgeable, but maybe not super comfortable with the camera. But we got him there. And
Once or twice, it was a
yeah,
good video.
it's a good video. So we got a lot of great interaction and reads with it. It's tough. You think 3 feet is one thing, and it's not. So I just wanted to show you sort of the varied types of communications we have, and then the sort of the time that goes into each type. And so our 24 action plan, I plan to throw somebody else right there in the all black clothing as our public safety PIO. It's not something we have to do a lot. We do not have a ton of crisis on camera media representation at Apex. And a lot of times those reporters are talking to those subject matter experts. And so we hope that this position will fill that gap, start developing relationships with the media, maybe formalize some sort of media request process because we get it all different ways. And the reporter will email 10 people at once, just hoping somebody will respond. And we need a better process than that because a lot of people are spinning our wheels at the same time. We're going to finish out the 150th celebration year. We're going to have Party in the Peak this September. We're going to hope to achieve our 150 videos. It's ambitious, you guys. Videos in the video vault, and then we're working on community tours right now. We will conduct another resident satisfaction survey this year. So the last one was in 2019 or 2020. And so we are due for one of those. And then another big goal for us this year is to create a social media plan. We need to identify our tone, our voice, our audience, and the use for each platform, and make sure that we're following and having some standards around that. And then highlights. So communications plan for major infrastructure projects. We know that those are a little different than some of our other communications plans. We probably have 9 or 10 open communications plans right now, just for some smaller things. But the Peakway, Big Branch, the downtown plan, when we start, revitalizing that parking lot and the downtown streetscape, those have different timelines. There's so many intricacies involved. We need to be talking with the construction team more, so there will be a little different looking communications template around that we're working on.
And then so like just being out of press the other day, right? Like I got several questions on, hey, when is this downtown thing gonna happen, right? Like got everybody excited a couple of years ago. And crickets, right? And so like, what are we doing to keep the
Right.
community engaged or informed, right? Especially these bigger things, especially things that are disruptive, right? We're gonna be digging up 55 or something, right? Like, that's going to be a major disruption. 64, the same thing, right? We want to have a strategy around how we're gonna approach our residents and the community at large, right?
Sure.
On some of these things, and, be informative and not just like have them, figure it out or be a victim of the situation once they're stuck in traffic.
Right. So filling that lull in activity with some updates as we get them or what we expect to get.
Right, exactly. It doesn't need to be frequent with downtown, for example, where it's staying on. We're kind of in a holding pattern right now, like through some legal issues or, whatever the case may be, just to keep everybody informed. Like we haven't forgotten about this, right? Just not that,
Sure.
So anyways.
Again, talking about special events communications guidelines for reliable and consistent information. And then 311 is something that's probably on your radar. You're talking a lot about. I'm very excited to see that get kicked off, and communications will be part of that process on the project team. Something else that I thought about, sorry, 30 more seconds, is something that we saw in conference a couple weeks ago, and that's plain language. And Chapel Hill's doing this really cool initiative around plain language and really bringing down the language to things that people can understand through their website and through anything printed or anything. So I'm excited to work that into our extended work plan as we find the time to do that. So I believe that's all I have.
I just want to say before you go off of this slide, so under the communication template for major projects in 311, so the first bullet where it says community engagement team, the community engagement team in 311 will fall under the community development department. So communications will have a role to play in all of that. But one of the things that we're finding, particularly around the major projects, is that some of those things are high touch. And so just sending out information is not, the best way to do it. And so as we build out the community engagement team, that's where the high touch piece will be incorporated into that. So Demetria and then the community development director will be working on that and then working with communications look like and when that needs to be.
We have the work session coming up in June. We'll be discussing in more in detail.
So that's it for the strategic plan update. This is just kind of a taste of what all of the departments have similar plans. Right now, what we're doing is each of the portfolio teams I'm meeting with each of the ATMs and Sean around their portfolio team strategic plans, and we're coming through we want to make sure that language is consistent across the organization and that we really understand, what the priorities and the initiatives are under each of those strategic plans. So as the year progresses and different departments come before you, you'll get more information on each of the departments.
I do have a question for you, Stacey. In my other organization, we have kind of a 3-staged comms team. Current ops, what needs to get out there, right? That's current constant operations, social media, stuff like that. Reactionary ops. Something happens. Who's the person who's stuck generating those talking points? And then we have kind of strategic ops, things that are coming down the pipe. Are you, in terms of an organization, are you focused on those 3 kind of priority areas? And do you need more bodies? Are you resourced right?
I think we're finding our way right now.
Okay.
To have grown from 1 to 4 in a relatively short span, and then possibly adding a 5th. I think we're figuring out where our strengths are and where we can play off each other. And I'm moving more into like, okay, I also need to develop them, and I need to think about them as employees. And so there's a lot of growing this past year and learning who's good at what. And where we need to focus. But yeah, I would say, Karen is managing a ton of communications plans, plus the 150. Kendall's like doing the social media. Randall's out there capturing all the assets. So yeah, we're kind of finding our way and all those various things.
I appreciate the fact that you guys are running while putting your pants on.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean, not just
And
you,
juggling.
DEI as well.
Yeah.
You guys are literally building the house while trying to
Right.
sleep in it. So
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys are everywhere. Like, kudos to the team because every time I show up somewhere, like, Brandon was there taking pictures, or Ken was there, making notes. So it's impressive. It's, the amount of ground that these guys cover.
And I can recall it in 2017 when Audra and I got on there, it was a constant kind of complaint maybe or weakness area that I think you guys, the growth, I think the team has really addressed a lot of that personally. I'm not sure how you feel, Audra, but yeah.
Completely agree with that.
It should be.
Thank you, Stacy, for that. Kate, they left you with.
15 minutes.
More than enough time. Is there enough time to cover this item in your thoughts?
Yeah, I believe so, because really the only thing that we were going to discuss today, so we got all of the feedback from everybody, and Megan has been hard at work, addressing all of those things and doing some stuff. So we still have work to do on the document. There were just a couple points that she needed to talk to the group about, or she wanted to discuss it. So it shouldn't take us long at all for that. So
Thank you. Bless you.
I admire your strategy of putting the attorney in the very time sensitive. Very strategic, very, very nice. I do. I applaud that.
In my defense, I thought we had until 5:30.
No, it's really, I agree with the chief. There's really not a lot, and that's why we don't have a handout today. We did receive all of your feedback, and thank you guys for the thoughtful comments. We're able to integrate most of that input already into the document. And I'll say right off the bat, we did have some negative feedback about the name. We also agree with that. We have changed the name already to just the Police Advisory Board. It seemed pretty consistent with the other advisory board names as you look through. So that just takes care of all the acronyms and all those issues. So that has been changed. We don't have the edited document today for you, just want to be clear. We received from Alan the consolidation. You all know he's working on the consolidating and streamlining of all of the boards that have decision-making and review capacities. So this would integrate with that group as well. So we want to make sure that we're consistent with what's happening in the town with this board. So working in tandem with that, and that affects a lot of the portions of the document that we had feedback about related to board formation and membership and how the housing applies. So we're working through that, and as Alan's working through it, we'll be in communication to make sure this is in lockstep there. The one thing that I think we did want to talk about, and I'll leave to the chief kind of to address this in general, is the background check question. I know that you had, Councilmember Gray, and why that exists and the purpose of that as it relates to this particular board. So, Chief, you want to address that?
yeah, so Councilman, the big part of us wanting to make sure that component stayed was some of the feedback that we got, and what we have included in updating in the document was having a youth member, a youth representative on this council. And having that youth representative on there, that is a component that we would have to have in place to ensure that there's not a conflict there with something that may be in somebody's history, but have them working in conjunction with the member of the youth. And so the youth piece was something that multiple members responded and wanted to see, and we were in agreement on. And so the part with the background check, and we have language in there to explain that somebody's criminal history does not make them ineligible to participate. So that's not what the background check is for. It's just to make sure that we don't have any conflict or something that could be problematic for us as a town with who you all select to be on this board. And that's why that component we really felt needed to stay in there and be captured.
Only thing I would add, I know you said this one point, the only other thing I would add, what should I wait until you?
My concern is that, when you start throwing in background checks, that can become a barrier to many people. If our concern is we've got a child and we can't have a child sex offender on there, I'm 99% sure none of us are picking a child sex offender. 99% sure. Also 99% sure that most child sex offenders try to stay as far away from you guys as possible. at least in my experience, they tend not to apply for this sort of thing. I would hate to see us using a filter that is not going to catch a fish that's coming in our direction. So I understand the explanation. I just want to make sure that it's fully understood that I don't want to have a barrier where someone's going to say, well, you're just secretly trying to figure out whether or not I've had a past conviction, because I fully believe in the idea of if you have served your debt to society, you should be able to participate in that society after you serve your debt.
Can we lighten the requirement and just to check against the sex offender registry instead of a full background check?
That's easy.
Good question.
We could. Here's my challenge with that is when we talk about doing a background check on somebody, and so my lens on that is it's not just what somebody has been convicted of that could be the issue for them. And so to Councilman Gray's point, if somebody is convicted of stealing, I don't care anything about that. They can serve on this board and they can be a valuable member on this board. If somebody has something in their background, let's say somebody had a domestic violence arrest or a charge that they had, and we have an advocate that wants to be on this board that is a victim of domestic violence. I look at that as a challenge for what we're going to have on this board, in my personal opinion. And when we look at domestic violence, how many of those cases never go to a conviction because the victims of domestic violence don't want to go that route, or they want to go that far. So when we talk about a background check on somebody, it's not looking to exclude somebody from what their convictions are or if they paid their debt to society. I'm looking at it from a much larger perspective of, the individuals that get on this board, they have to be able to function within the group. And I would hate for there to be a barrier on that group where a lot of times from what I see, when individuals get on the thing, what do they start doing? They start Googling the people that they're working with and different things like that, or checking up on them. And I think that should be part of our responsibility on the front end, to where it wouldn't automatically be a disqualifier for somebody. But I do think it's things that we should take into considerations. And so having the questionnaire that we originally sent out to you all, of the application and the questions that are on there, that helps us be able to sift through some of that information, to where if I have somebody and the reason or the motivation that they have to want to be on this board is because they've been a victim of something in their life, and they want to do everything in their power to be an advocate and a voice for that. I think one of the worst things that we can have in place is a system where we're not checking to see if that person is going to be negatively impacted by who may be on this board. And that doesn't need to be, or that doesn't have to be from a conviction that they have from that sense. It could just be from troubling behavior that individual has exuded in the past that may not make them a good individual to have on the board. So when we talk about the background check, the child piece and having a youth on there absolutely jumps to the forefront, because we know that's a vulnerable population. But we also have to look at it, and I'm looking at it from a bigger lens of trying to make sure that it's not problematic for the and the people that will want to serve on this board. So, and that's why we put language on there that just if you have a criminal record, that does not negatively impact you of just having that record. And we're not trying to say these individuals can't be on it. It's very specific things that we're looking at to make sure that we don't create any unintended conflict for somebody that wants to serve on this board.
No, I agree. And I think your point is well spoken, but as we both know, I can go to the magistrate, file a 50B against Arno. That's going to be there. And now he's going to be disqualified simply because I made what may or may not have been a fully vetted out complaint against a person. 50B is the statute that allows somebody to make a complaint of domestic violence or any other type of complaint against any individual just by going to a magistrate, swearing it out, and now it's on your background.
And that's why, Councilman, the language that we put on the application and there was to explain, that's what the background check is for. Is just because somebody has something in their background doesn't mean that they can't serve on this or that they're a proper person to be on here. It just gives the town the ability to look in to see, what happened and what went into it, to make a conscious decision on, yes, we feel comfortable as a town moving this individual forward for you all to consider for this board.
I think ultimately, if you all want it removed or wanted to stay, it would be make that decision. The only other thing I would add to that is that, there were a few comments about the training piece, and I just wanted to highlight that, with the exception of the police academy, the training will be done during the meeting, so it's not above and beyond what they're already doing.
There's clarifying language that's been added that clarifies that the hours of training and for the 2-year initial terms, so the shorter terms to stagger, those individuals will just complete whatever training is offered during that 2 years during those meetings. So they don't have to squeeze the 10 hours into 2 years versus 3. That's 10 hours over 3 years during the meetings. It's facilitated and arranged by the liaison from the police department, and it's provided as part of that same holistic time. So it's not time outside of the meeting time. So if you belong to a profession where, say, you have to have continuing education hours, and you go to a luncheon or something and they give you an hour's worth of, it's like that. It would be integrated in that way. Those subject matter experts would come to the meeting and provide that training.
Was there conflicting feedback from the members?
Yes.
Very much so.
But I worked it out.
You worked it out?
No, there was, but it got worked out and integrated into the document. Some of it had to do with the formation, some of the things that Alan's working on, in terms of just how, membership, how do people become members, and, removal process, all of that will be streamlined as part of what he's doing. That's kind of consistency based across I understand that that's the desire of the town, to have consistency across the boards about how those things are handled. And so, in integrating that resolves those issues, because that will be consistent with the other advisory group.
Like the youth council piece, we thought the recommendation is that we have a representative from the existing youth council to serve, and then that person be a liaison back and forth. So it just gives them another opportunity to participate. Other than that, the other stuff is pretty easy to.
In the interest of time, I'm more than willing to concede my point to the chief.
Thank you, sir. That's mighty big of a Howard.
I'm sorry.
Just one quick question, and now I'll go ahead and close this out. Would there be a part of the process that the community can weigh in before anything is put in place? Is there going to be a matter of transparency and engagement? How's that going to work?
I think that would largely be up to you all and how you wanted that to look, or what you wanted that to look like. So,
Wouldn't we have to have this at least for public comment as we're creating a new board? If we're going to vote on it, actually coming into existence, I think it sounds like we'd have to have public hearing on that.
Statutorily, or we choose to?
It sounds like, we could choose to do it that way. We're saying, hey, we're creating a board. This is really nice. Anybody got anything they want to say? All right, we can vote up or down.
Yeah, I was talking there earlier. We can choose to have a public hearing like we do for anything else, and invite public comment, and then have our vote after that.
I think that would be the way I would recommend or like to see it.
I like that.
Anything else?
Told you we have plenty of time, sir.
Man, appreciate everyone. Appreciate the work you're doing, and thank you. Have a good afternoon.
Soft level there.
So, yeah.
The mayor.
Yeah.
I
For the planning committee, when I had the one time that got on that,